Well, hey, everybody, I am Sunny Brown, and I'm with the Alumni Association here at Ole Miss, and you are attending our first Adulting 101 series. And part of this series, just kind of talking around the office, we were like, there's a lot of things that you just don't learn in college, and you probably need to know them after you graduate. And so we kind of threw this together as a way just to help others as the Ole Miss family does. And so this first one is on home buying, and we have several realtors and our mortgage guru, Amy Hartley, with us to share all of their knowledge and kind of help anyone that is in this process. And hopefully we will learn some good things, some good tips, and it won't be so darn intimidating when we start looking for our new home or next home. So without further ado, I will let everybody introduce themselves. So starting alphabetically, Alex, I'll let you take it away.
I'm Alex Murray. I am a realtor with Parks Realty in Nashville, Tennessee. I have had my license for about 1.5 years. So I'm pretty new to real estate, but I'm loving it. I came in at an interesting time. So needless to say, it's a once in a generation market, and it's just never been this way before. And that's kind of all I've known since I've been in real estate. So that's been fun. And I got into real estate because I've worked in finance for many years before that. And I just really got tired of sacrificing so much for a job that I didn't really feel was fulfilling. And I've always loved beautiful homes and working with people. So I just figured real estate was the perfect thing for me to do. And I can be my own boss now, which is amazing.
Lots of benefits in the real estate world, I would imagine.
Yes.
Well, Amy, I'll let you introduce yourself next.
Okay, I'm Amy Hartley, currently mortgage loan officer, but my previous life, I was also a realtor. I got my license when I was 18, did that for 14 years in Madison, Mississippi, and then we moved back to Oxford from Madison, and thinking about having kids, and knew I didn't want to have to work every weekend because my husband's a park ranger. So I was like, I'll use my degree, do the mortgage side instead. So I've been doing mortgages now for 8 years. It's very beneficial to have been on the realtor side for so long, because I know everything that kind of goes into it on that side as well. So those experiences have been invaluable to me as a loan officer for sure. Got into real estate because my whole family has been in real estate. Started out at 18 and been in it ever since. So I love it. It was more fun being a realtor. I probably make a little more money being a loan officer, so I'm going to have to stick with it. But if I could go back to being a realtor, I probably would in a heartbeat.
She knows all the inside details, so that's always good. Justin, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah. Hey guys, my name is Justin Wallace. So I actually graduated Ole Miss in 2011 undergrad and 2012 grad school. So my degrees were in accounting. I did public accounting work for about 3.5 years. Basically my employer was like, hey, do you want a promotion? And I was like, yeah, not really. I kind of hate this job. So actually my minor in undergrad was real estate. And so I was like, that's always been a passion of mine. I've always loved homes. And then, kind of coupling that with a finance background, understanding numbers and how they work. I kind of decided to take the plunge while I was younger, didn't have a family to support. If I was ever going to go commission based, that was the time to do it. So that was about 4.5, 5 years ago. So I'm in Dallas, Texas now, and I've been with Compass for the last 2 years, but I've been in real estate for 4.5, 5.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Quintavious. And the funny thing is, y'all, I got lost on the way back from Memphis, was driving down this road that didn't even have a line on it. And I saw a real estate sign and it was Quintavious. And I remember when he played football and I was like, he needs to be on our panel. And so that's how I found you. So I will let you introduce yourself. And I know you're doing just a bang up job. So go ahead.
Yes, Quintavious Burdette from small town San Antonio, Mississippi. I played football and ran track there at Ole Miss from 2012 to 2016. Like Justin, I have a master's and an undergraduate degree from the accounting school there. I didn't last 3 years in public accounting. I only lasted about 3 months. I went to Atlanta and worked with KPMG. And I was kind of there looking at the billing report, seeing what they were kind of paying us versus what they was billing the clients. And I Googled, what profession can I make what I'm worth? And real estate popped up 2 years ago. And I jumped into real estate. And in the last 2 years, I've sold over 300 houses. I'm the #1 agent in all of Mississippi, #3 agent in our region, including Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. And what I do, guys, is I hustle. I don't pay for marketing. I don't pay for leads. I do it the hard way, going to door knock, cold call, and talk to people in public. Some say this old football career of mine helped me with real estate, but I say this old voice of mine helped me. But that's just my short story, and we'll get into more, I guess, here in a second. But enough about me.
The man with the plan and all the knowledge. So we are all fortunate to have y'all. And like I said, this is a small group, so feel free to ask any questions at any time, but I do have a few that we have compiled in our office. So I'll start with those and we'll just move right through them. This will be a short class, but the good thing is we are recording and we can throw it up online as well and put everybody's contact information on there so that everyone can benefit from this down the road. So with that being said, what are your biggest tips for first-time home buyers? Or your biggest tip, one tip? We'll start there.
I would say the first thing is figure out how much house you can afford, just so that you're not wasting time looking at homes that are, way above your price range or what you can afford. And that's especially important in the current market. With there being so little standing inventory. And if you find a place, you really have to be ready to move. So just know exactly what you can afford. And I think the goal is to pretty much buy a house that you can be comfortable with paying for on a monthly basis. And it's not going to keep you up at night worrying. And it's actually, I think, in my opinion, and maybe someone here will disagree, I think it's a good idea to kind of aim low. And the way that you can avoid the mistake of aiming too high for something that you maybe can't afford is you can actually use a mortgage affordability calculator, and that can help you know what price range is affordable and what's not affordable for you.
Great tip. We can just, anyone that wants to chime in, feel free to do so.
I was going to kind of say, like, obviously getting pre-approved is key. You don't want to fall in love with something that you can't have, because nothing will ever be the same. But one of the things that I actually wrote down, and this was from my realtor days, is, don't bounce around with different realtors. A lot of people don't understand that realtors are paid by the seller. So you can pick one that you're comfortable with, that you trust, stick with that realtor, and don't bounce around and call people off of different signs, because if you get one realtor that you love, they may actually find the house while they're out showing different clients. As a realtor, I found several homes for people who I was showing a different client, but they didn't love it. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is this person's house. And I would go back to the office and call them and go take it and show it to them, and they would buy it. So if you have a realtor that has seen a couple of properties with you, they know what you like, they're going to be working for you even when they're not physically with you. So my advice is to pick one good buyer's agent and stick with them through the whole process.
Yeah, something that I'll add is I think the most important thing for buyers that I work with is for them to understand the market, understand the process. Buyers nowadays, when I say understand the process, we need to know exactly on the front end, what do you guys need to be approved? What is the qualifying score at this time? How long is it taking buyers to shop around for a house before they actually find one, so you won't get discouraged? What can you ask for in your offer that might get accepted? What are you willing to do? So understanding that process and kind of what's going on in the market on the front end, I think is the most important thing with buyers that I work with, because everything else, us as agents, we take care of anyways. But getting that first front to say, hey, I understand the market, I understand the process, now let's roll.
Yeah, and then I would also add to that, kind of understanding what you have to have financially. How much money do you have to actually buy a house? One of the biggest misconceptions, especially with first-time home buyers, is they always hear 20% down, 20% down. You don't need to put 20% down on a property in order to buy a house. I'm a homeowner. We didn't put 20% down on my first house. But I think you need to understand not only the actual down payment, but the other costs that go into the home purchase with closing costs, and then additionally the costs associated with maintaining a property.
All good tips. I know that the market is a fast moving market. And Q, you kind of touched on this a little bit. How important do you think pre-approval is, and what paperwork should I be getting together right now before I even look at a house?
Yeah, so currently now, I don't work with too many buyers. Most of my clients are sellers. But the buyers I do work with, it is a must that you have a pre-approval before I would even leave my desk. Because nowadays sellers are wanting that approval letter before you even show a house up here. So to get that is the first step, but also stuff that you need. And I'm pretty sure Amy can touch on it much better than I can, but 2 years worth of tax returns if you're self-employed. Some lenders can go off of, your last 2 year W-2s if you aren't self-employed. They need, bank statements, they need check stubs, they need to check your credit, they need to see how much debt you have. It's more to, a lot of folks always call and say, hey, what my credit score have to be for me to buy a house? Well, your credit score can be 800. It can, but if you don't have everything else in order, then you can't buy a house. So just understanding what all goes into that pre-approval process, and Amy can touch on it much more than I can, like I said.
Yeah, so like the main thing is we're going to look at your past 2 years, and then we're also going to try to determine that income is going to remain steady over the next 3 years. We can't technically probe you for that information about going forward. So just as long as there's nothing in any of the documentation that says, hey, this job is temporary. I see that a lot in Oxford with the university with people who are on research committees that their contracts say that it may be reevaluated in a year or two. So I'll just kind of touch on a couple of the things, kind of the gotchas that people, obviously the basic list of items is your last 2 years W-2s, your most recent pay stub, your most recent 2 months bank statements, driver's license. That we get that on every single file. Where people get tripped up is when it comes to variable income. So if you've got a job and you've been there for 2 years, but your hours vary or your income varies, let's just say you have tons of bonus or overtime or commission income, something that's not consistent every single month. There's a lot of times that people think that they can use income that they can't, they have it, but just because you have it doesn't necessarily mean that I can count it as qualifying income. So anything that's variable, whether it be hourly or the number of hours that you work, if it's not consistent and steady, we have to take a 2-year average. So obviously self-employed people, that's variable. So you have to have a 2-year history to be able to do that. But that also comes into play with varying hours and all kinds of stuff. So I see the majority of the people that get tripped up on income is when it's something that I end up having to average over the last 2 years, and the average is less than what they're currently making. Or the big thing is if your income declines from 1 year to the next, Fannie Mae, who is the conventional guys, they will not let me use that income at all. So a lot of people think, hey, I've got a job, this is my income. But just because you have that income and that's what you're making right now, it may not actually be the number that I can use to qualify you for a loan. So there's a lot of different things that you kind of have to look at, not just what are you making right now, but what was your full 2-year history, and can I actually use everything that you have right now? If you've got a second job or anything like that, you've got to have a consistent 2-year history of it that's filed on a tax return for me to be able to count it.
All good tips for sure. Does anybody else have anything to add, Alex, Justin?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about pre-approvals, I personally won't show a buyer client a house unless I know that they're pre-approved. So especially in this market, Alex already touched on this. We're seeing multiple offers on nearly every property that hits the market right now. If you submit an offer on a property, if you have an agent that's dumb enough to take you on without a pre-approval, the seller is not even going to entertain your offer. They're going to open that email and they're going to just send it straight to the trash can. They're not even going to look at your offer because they have no idea who you are, how much money you have, and if you're actually qualified to buy their house. So, one of the very first steps is getting in touch with a good realtor that is going to be your representation and represent your best interest, and then get with a good qualified lender that is going to get you pre-approved and walk you through, what kind of cash you're going to need to get the deal closed, what your payments are going to look like, so that you can set yourself up to be in a comfortable situation on the houses that you're looking at.
Great information for sure. Alex, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was gonna add that you would and probably also want to include records of rent payments if you were renting prior to deciding to buy a home, and then any asset statements on bank accounts, retirement, brokerage accounts. Obviously, if it's someone who's a recent college graduate, I don't really know how much of that they would have, but typically that is something that that you would need for the pre-approval letter.
And
Let me-
Amy.
Yeah,
you-
let me add this real quick. So a lot of you guys, if you're about to be graduates, I have to have a full 2-year work history, but school definitely counts for that. So I would just put in your school, the name of the school, the dates that you were there. I'll have to get an official copy of your transcript. That absolutely counts as the part of the 2-year work history.
Yep.
All good tips. Let's see what else we've got. In terms of closing, so you have found the perfect home, and we are jumping around, so y'all feel free to go back or add things in. What are your tips for closing? So we found the perfect home and we've made an offer. What next?
Getting
So-
all the contingencies squared away, so that includes financing, home inspection, appraisal. I'd say that's really important.
I think the best thing you can do is hire an agent that's gonna kind of walk you through those steps and do it for you, communicate well with you. As far as, you know, it's the agent's job to get the deal to the closing table. It's your job to decide on the house and to put together the best offer for your agent, can present that to the opposite side. But as far as once that offer is accepted, it's that agent's job on both sides to get that deal to the closing table. So if it's something that you don't know, of course, that's why you hire them. They should walk you through it. Don't feel like you have to know everything. When you buy a house, you just have to know what you want to spend, and if you like the location, and if so, let's make an offer that you're comfortable with. And then at that point going forward, we can work together to get you to the closing table. Things that you should do before, or should do actually before closing is, you know, don't go out and look to buy any new furniture. You don't have a house yet. You're moving too fast. Slow down. All right. Just because you got approved for a house doesn't mean you need a new car. The 2-car garage can only fit 2. You already have 2. Don't get another. All right. So it's all those little things that folks run into where they think they need to get the credit ran for this. What I tell folks is, before you spend one nickel, pick up the phone and you call the lender, or you call myself. All right. If they say it's good to go, then that's when we'll move forward. If not, you don't spend that nickel. You flip it back in your hand and put it in your pocket.
Great advice.
Indeed. I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I tell buyers, do not buy a car, do not do anything related to credit unless you have explicitly talked to your lender and you have explicit permission. I'll never forget, one of the biggest heart attacks I had as an agent was a friend of mine. I was selling my house. It was a new construction house. It took 9 months to build it. We met him for dinner one night and he pulls up in a brand new car. And I'm like, dude, I can't, like, what? You bought a new car? I've told you multiple times, don't buy a car. And he's like, don't worry. I called my lender. They said it was fine. You know, but I still don't recommend it, you know, because it changes your debt to income, it changes your qualifications for your mortgage, and it can keep you from buying that house that you're so in love with.
And also, you know, for the folks who have cash, I've ran across more people that got cash in the back seat or in the backyard, and they just run to the bank and deposit it. Well, that lender, they have to go back 60 days, people. So if you have cash, I tell you what to do. You deposit it today and wait 90 days before you buy a house, and then they won't have any questions about it. But during that process, if you have cash, cash is not king in this process, okay? Cash
Fringe.
will kill a deal.
Word cash.
Cash will kill a deal when you go and make a deposit or make a large withdrawal. So understand, you know, how to present your cash. And if you have cash, if it's a gift, guess what? Whoever's giving you that gift is going to have to show where they got the money from. And if it's something illegal, they can't use it. So just be cautious on depositing cash into your account in large amounts.
It's a great tip too. And one you probably don't even think about as, you know,
No,
savings and that sort of thing.
we actually have to deduct that cash deposit from the ending balance on your statement. So if you've got $2,000 ending balance that we're trying to use every penny of, and then you've got a $400 cash deposit, now you've only got $1,600 that I can use. So it can really kill it.
Great tip. I guess this is kind of a no-brainer. Well, not really. It probably isn't. None of these questions are no-brainers. Should I buy a fixer upper? I know Alex touched on, you know, buy low if you can, try, do that. should I buy a fixer upper? I know we did, and I mean, it's heartache every now and then.
I think it really depends. I would say it depends on your financial situation. You really have to figure out what your budget is, and you have to budget not only the cost of the home, but also any repairs that you would need to make and how much of it you can do yourself as well. You kind of just have to know who you are as a person. Some people really enjoy that process and other people don't. So if you're someone where you don't see yourself enjoying the process, then don't do it, because you will hate it and it'll be more trouble than it's worth, I think. And I mean, a lot of the time, by the time you figure in all of the costs to renovate a fixer-upper, it would cost more than, just buying a home that is exactly the way that you would want it. And the other thing to consider too is, especially if you're moving to another city, where will you live until the home is move-in ready? It's one thing if you have family that you can stay with while you're doing all of that, or I guess if you're willing to live in the home while it's being renovated, but I think a lot of people are not. So that's an additional cost. Like if you have to rent a place while you're doing the renovations, that's another cost to take into account. But yeah, I think it just depends on what your budget is and on how much of a fixer-upper the fixer-upper is. I mean, there's some that are a total disaster and you have to basically do everything. And if it's just a couple of things, then I don't see why not. But yeah.
I mean, I would say too, on the flip side of that, though, there's certainly, equity to be made by buying a property that is significantly outdated, especially if it's in a highly desirable area. If you come in and you do the updates and you do them right, you can absolutely build extra equity in the property. So can it make sense to buy a fixer-upper? Absolutely. But I think Alex is right, especially you have to kind of consider what are you capable of doing yourself? Are you going to have to hire out the work? If you're hiring it out, how are you paying for it? What I tend to see a lot of times is, say I've got a client with a $450,000 budget, but they're wanting a $650,000 house. And they're saying, okay, let's go buy a fixer-upper. This house is $450,000. It just needs a little bit of love. That's great. But then how are you going to pay for those updates? Are you going to have to get a construction loan to modify the property? And then what does that look like? Do you qualify for that type of loan? Do you have the cash on hand to buy the house and then use the cash to do the updates? So again, like Alex said, it's really just going to depend from one scenario to the next, from person to person.
There are loan products, like we have a renovation to perm loan where you can go ahead and build all that in on the front end, but the terms are not as favorable as buying just a ready-made home. So you would have to have a larger down payment. The terms may end up being a shorter term or an adjustable rate. So there are options to finance that in on the front end, but the loan's not going to be as smart on the back.
Yeah. And Amy, you can feel free to correct me if I misspeak, but most of my lenders that I work with and have relationships here, those types of loan products that they have, they're not attractive to a seller right now in the current market, because those types of loans, they're more complicated. They require additional appraisals. They also require longer time frame to close. Right now, you really have to how you're being competitive.
You have to have the entire budget, plans and specs, contract with the contractor. You have to use a contractor that's licensed and bonded. I can totally see in the last 6 months that's way, it would take way too long. Previously, 6 months ago, we were doing them a lot, but now it's so competitive that I don't think anybody would accept that offer either.
So basically what they're saying is, first time home buyer, you have to crawl before you can walk. You don't just go to the park and get on the scariest ride first if you've never been. You start with a baby ride. So in this same field, let's try to get you in a house, let you understand the responsibilities of owning a house before we go to knocking down walls as low bearing, and now you have a problem. All right.
That is probably the best. Don't knock down walls yourself unless you know what they're holding up. All right, let's switch gears for a little bit. We'll run through a few more questions, maybe two, and then we'll get out of here. But I have learned so much, and I think this will be so beneficial for so many other people. So we're looking in rental properties. What are the keys to look for when you're renting? Is it smart to rent? If you can afford to buy, should you buy? What we got?
I think it absolutely makes sense to rent a property, especially if you're new to an area, you don't know where you want to live, you don't know how long you're going to be in that destination. One of the things that I've seen a lot is people always hear, you need to buy a house, you need to buy a house, you need to buy a house. And it's true, it's a great way to build wealth. However, if you know that you're only going to be in a certain location for a finite period of time, say 2, maybe 3 years, you have to also look at the market, the rate of appreciation, the cost of owning the property, and the cost of selling the property when you're ready. You know, the last thing you want to do is buy a house because you think it's a good investment, and then you sell it 12, 18 months down the road. And because of the fees associated with selling a property, you're going to be underwater, and you might end up having to bring cash to the table when you go to sell the house. It's not an ideal situation. You know, so renting can certainly make sense, especially if you want to get into a place and kind of figure out what area of town you want to be in. You can kind of figure out, if you've never really lived on your own before, kind of get used to being out on your own in the real world, get, you know, associated with paying all those bills yourself, because there is extra responsibility associated with home ownership.
Yep, and I look at that renting versus buying. You know, if you don't know you're going to be somewhere for a while, think about it like this. If you rent, that's like going to the casino, put your number on, betting with the casino. You might lose sometimes, you might win sometimes, but you're definitely going to lose for sure. And the buying side of it is, it's a much larger risk. You're a dice shooter. All right, you're giving yourself the opportunity to either win big or lose. But renting, you know, I look at it as you're still going to lose money. If you rent for 3 years at $1,200 or $1,000 a month, you know, that's 12,000 times 3, that's $36,000 that you've lost. If you buy a property and you only put down 5%, you have, you know, $10,000 in to $15,000 in it, and the property is still worth what you paid for it. Essentially, you're not going to lose $36,000 over that 3 years. So it's kind of, you have to just weigh that when you're looking to buy. If you're in a position to buy, try to buy. And if you can't, rent. That's just what it, because me, I own rental property, and I want you to rent. I want everybody in the town to rent. And I'm a real estate agent. It's because I own a lot of property, and that's how my properties get paid for, from you guys renting. Because here's the fact. You're going to pay a mortgage regardless. It's either going to be your mortgage or it's going to be mine. And I'd much rather you pay yours.
I'll add
that.
just as current market situations. I mean, I own a bunch of rental properties also, and just looking at simple economics and supply and demand, the rental market is about to go up, and
Yes.
that's not going to change for the next 3 to 5 years, maybe 5 to 10 years. There's a larger pool of people that are going to have to rent. All of these people that are on unemployment right now cannot get a mortgage with unemployment income. Once you start back to your job, you have to be there for 6 months before I can start counting that income again in most cases. So there's going to be people that are a year out from being able to qualify for a mortgage that are going to be in the renting pool of buyers. There's also very recent change with Fannie Mae, where now we require 40% down payment at Bancorp South for second home or investment properties. It used to be 10% and 15%. So there's tons of people like myself who probably would be in the market to buy a new rental property in the next year or so, but because now everything has changed with Fannie Mae, I don't have 40% to put down, so it's going to take me longer. So now there's going to be everybody that would have bought an investment property in the next couple of years, probably half of them aren't going to be able to do that anymore. So that's going to be a decrease in the supply. We've got an increase in the demand. So the rental prices have nowhere to go but up in the next 3 to 5 years. So if you can start now, and 3% down payment is all you need. If you can get that saved, I absolutely feel like it's a smarter decision, unless you think you're going to move in a year, obviously. But if you can come up with 3% down payment, I absolutely think it's a better decision to go ahead and buy something in this particular market that we're in right now.
Alex, do you have anything to add?
I second everything that's been said. Those are pretty much the only notes that I had written down. Yeah, I mean, I don't really see any reason to put off buying unless, like Justin was saying, you're moving to a new city or a new area and you're just not familiar with anything and you kind of want to look around and explore neighborhoods. That's a good reason to rent. But otherwise, I would say, yeah, if you can buy, definitely buy.
Great. Let's wrap this up with one last question, because I think our audience members are slowly fading, and I mean, they are missing out. In terms of resale, what is one thing I should look for when I purchase?
Location, location, location. Yeah.
I think that's a resounding answer there.
That's about
Just
it.
be
I mean,
cautious of things that other buyers may be turned off by, even if it doesn't really bother you. I bought a house early on that didn't have a master tub, didn't bother me. I never take baths, only take showers, but it was an issue when I tried to sell it. So that was a lesson learned early in life. So there, you got to look at everything that not just you're concerned about, but what potential buyers down the road will look at.
Yeah, and consider the current market, but also look at the sales history for the home. Like compare the current list price to what the home's previously sold for. And your real estate agent can usually help you with that. That information, it's available in the tax records, which are publicly available, and your agent should be able to help you locate that.
Unless you're in Mississippi.
Yeah. Texas. Yeah.
Mississippi is non-disclosure.
Yeah. Texas is non-disclosure as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all so much. Does anybody have any last words of wisdom for the group? Don't be intimidated. It's not
Don't
the
be
worst process.
Yes. Totally. Not as bad as it seems.
Yeah. Those are some good lasting words. Find yourself a great real estate agent that you know you have a good relationship with.
And
And
don't be scared of the market, because you hear a lot of people say now there's no inventory. That's not really technically true. There's just no standing inventory. It just means that you got to have everything ready to go and know exactly what you are looking for. But don't let anyone scare you away. Now is a good time to buy, low interest rates. So yeah, it might be more effort to find your perfect home, but it's still not a reason not to buy now.
And I think too, again, find that agent, find that resource, somebody that's going to represent your interests, and heed their advice and set realistic expectations within your budget. I have friends that want a $750,000 house in Nashville, but their budget's probably closer to 400, and so they refuse to buy. And I'm like, well, you're never going to get to that next house if you don't start somewhere, right? So make sure you're setting realistic expectations, and a good agent, a good lender can help you do that.
Q, any last words of wisdom?
Yeah, if you're buying in Mississippi, you call me.
That's right.
But no, seriously, when you start looking, interview a couple agents before you pick one. Get someone. I know a lot of folks, they like to desell the agent that's very busy, but that's who you want to work with. They're going to get the most properties that come across their desk, so you'll have more options to choose from. I tell folks all the time, I get a phone call every single day from somebody looking to sell a house. I got 77 houses right now pending on a contract. If something falls through, you'll be the first person to know about it. All right, so just understanding, the agent you pick, you don't pay. So you need to pick someone who's going to be great, the best. But also understanding that they have connections, they talk to people. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to say, oh, let's slow down. Don't be afraid to get started. So when we go out and see a house, I tell folks all the time, if you don't plan on buying it, meaning if you don't have your checkbook and you're ready to write earnest money, let's not see it. If it's not good enough for you to bring your checkbook, we're not going to go out and see it. So when you guys start looking at, have that mindset. Hey, when I go in a house, I'm looking to buy something. I'm not looking to just mope around and look. And when you go in, be ready to pull the trigger.
It's a great tip. All right, y'all. Well, I appreciate y'all so much for joining us, and we will record this, of course, put it up online. And so if anybody would like to share it with their constituents or on their Facebook page, you're more than welcome. I'll send that to y'all. But thank you again. And this has been great. And in 2 weeks, we'll be back with retirement and investments. So see y'all then. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.